I want you to stop for a moment and ask yourself one brutal question. Who are you really? I mean it. Who are you when no one is watching, when the excuses stop, when the distractions fade, when the fear rises in your chest and there's nowhere to hide? Most people spend their entire lives answering that question with lies, half-truths, and stories they've been told about who they are supposed to be. They allow the past to define them, the failures to shame them, and the opinions of others to cage them. They look in the mirror every day, but they don't recognize themselves. They see limits. They see weakness. They see someone smaller than the person they were meant to become. And the tragedy is most will live their entire lives like this, never realizing the power that has been lying dormant inside them. But that is not you. Not if you decide right now that your old story is over, that your excuses are finished, and that you are ready to rewrite the blueprint of your life. I'm not talking about a wish. I'm not talking about motivation that fades in a few hours. I'm talking about a full-on, no compromise, take control of your identity kind of transformation. I'm talking about seeing yourself the way you need to see yourself, the way you were always capable of being, even if your mind screams that it's impossible. You've been living on borrowed courage, on borrowed confidence, on borrowed dreams, thinking that one day somehow life will hand you the version of yourself you've been waiting for. But here's the truth. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to deliver your greatness on a silver platter. If you want to see yourself differently, if you want to rise, if you want to conquer, you must decide right now that you are done settling. You must step into the fight, stare down fear, silence doubt, and declare to yourself and the world that who you were yesterday is over. And who you are becoming will not be denied. Every second you spend doubting, hesitating, or hiding is a second lost. A second the old you tries to hold on. A second the life you could have slips away. Transformation doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't knock politely. It hits hard and it requires action, relentless action, until it is no longer something you do. It is who you are. The energy you bring into every decision, every thought, every habit, every word you speak will either reinforce the person you've been or build the person you are becoming. And here's the kicker. No one else will force this change for you. The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't cheer either. The world doesn't hand out chances, but it will respond to those who act, those who refuse to quit, and those who commit to relentless, undeniable transformation. So I ask you right now, are you ready to see yourself differently? Are you ready to break the chains of fear, to destroy the lies you've believed, to embrace the struggle, and to step into a version of yourself so powerful, so confident, so relentless that nothing and no one can stop you? Because the moment you commit, the moment you act, the moment you refuse to settle, the moment you speak, move, and live as the person you are becoming, your life will never, ever be the same. And from this second on, everything changes. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. You are standing at the threshold of the life you were always meant to live. The question is, will you step through it or will you turn back and stay small? The first step in transforming your life, in truly changing the way you see yourself, begins with identifying the lies that have been running your mind for years, often without your conscious awareness. These lies are subtle, they are clever, and they are powerful. They whisper to you in quiet moments. They echo when you are alone. They shape the decisions you make without you even realizing it. You tell yourself, I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to do that. And suddenly those thoughts become your reality. Every limitation you've ever faced, every fear that has held you back, every failure that has crushed your spirit, they are not always a reflection of your actual ability or your true potential. Often they are reflections of lies that you accepted as truth. These lies might have been planted by others, parents who doubted you, teachers who overlooked you, friends who told you to stay small, but more often than not, they are lies you tell yourself. They creep in through comparison, insecurity, and self-doubt, convincing you that your dreams are too big, that your goals are unrealistic, that your worth is tied to someone else's standards. The first act of radical transformation is to call these lies exactly what they are. Stop softening the blow. Stop allowing these narratives to control your life. These lies are not reality. They are chains. They are walls built around your potential, and you cannot break through them until you see them clearly, name them, and reject them outright. When you begin to dissect these lies, you realize how deeply embedded they are in your identity. Perhaps you believe that success is reserved for someone else, that talent is innate and you were born without it. Maybe you've carried the idea that your background, your circumstances, or your failures define your destiny. These lies convince you that your past is your prison, that your mistakes are permanent, that the world has already written your story and you are only allowed to read it. But that is a narrative designed to keep you small, to keep you safe, and to keep you from realizing the raw power that lives inside of you. The truth is, none of those external factors define you unless you give them the authority to do so. Your family, your community, your socioeconomic background, none of that is a verdict on your potential. None of that has the power to limit your rise unless you allow it. And the lies that you believed about yourself are exactly what give them that power. Every time you accept one of these lies, you are handing over your life to a false story. Every time you excuse yourself from trying, every time you settle for comfort instead of growth, every time you hide behind "I can't," you are reinforcing the chains. The lies are insidious because they masquerade as truth. They hide in your thoughts, in your justifications, in the excuses you tell yourself every single day. They whisper, "You're not ready," when the reality is the moment you are waiting for will never arrive until you create it. They convince you that you're weak, when the truth is that you've never truly tested the limits of your strength. They tell you that you've already failed, when in reality, failure is only a stepping stone to the life you haven't dared to build yet. Destroying these lies requires a level of honesty that most people avoid. It is uncomfortable, it is painful, and it is relentless. You cannot simply say, "I want to change," and expect the lies to vanish. You must dig deeper. You must confront the voice inside your head that says you are not enough, that your dreams are too big, that the world is against you. You must interrogate every story you've been telling yourself and ask, is this my truth or someone else's version of my life? This is not a one-time exercise. It is a process, a daily conscious effort. You must catch yourself every time you rationalize failure, every time you minimize your ambition, every time you shrink to make someone else comfortable, because those moments are where the lies live. And until you destroy them, you will never fully see yourself as the force you are capable of becoming. To destroy these lies, you must replace them with truth, absolute, uncompromising truth about your potential. You must repeat it to yourself until it is louder than the lies, until the false narratives drown in the power of your own declaration. Tell yourself that you are capable, even when the world doubts you. Tell yourself that your past does not define you, even when it screams reminders of old failures. Tell yourself that you are worthy, even when others have tried to convince you otherwise. Speak the truth so loudly that your mind has no choice but to believe it. The lies cannot survive in the presence of relentless self-belief. Another crucial aspect of destroying the lies you've believed about yourself is accountability. You cannot do it alone. Surround yourself with people who reflect your vision of possibility, not those who reinforce the limitations you are trying to escape. Seek out mentors, peers, and environments that challenge you to rise above the falsehoods that have held you captive. Every interaction, every relationship, every piece of content you consume either feeds the lies or fuels your liberation. Choose wisely. Protect your men. As fiercely as you would protect your most valuable possession, because your perception of yourself is the most powerful weapon in your arsenal. The moment you start seeing yourself differently, the world begins to respond differently. People start treating you with respect. Opportunities start appearing, and your life begins to align with the new truth you've created. But this transformation begins internally. It begins with the destruction of the lies that have dictated your life up until now. It is not easy, and it will never be easy. These lies have been with you for years, some since childhood. They are comfortable because familiarity is safe. They are seductive because they make you feel justified. They give you excuses for mediocrity. They offer a false shield against disappointment. But comfort is the enemy of growth. Security is the enemy of transformation. The only way to truly change the way you see yourself is to embrace discomfort, to face fear, to stare at the lies and refuse to flinch. You must be willing to feel the pain of confrontation, because on the other side of that pain lies the freedom to see yourself as limitless, to see yourself as worthy, to see yourself as someone capable of extraordinary achievement. Every day, commit to recognizing the lies, rejecting them, and speaking truth into your life. This is not optional if you desire real change. Every thought you nurture either builds the prison or breaks it down. Every word you speak either changes you to the past or propels you into your potential. Every action you take either affirms the lies or shatters them completely. The moment you take ownership of this process, the moment you decide that lies will no longer control your narrative, is the moment your transformation begins. Remember, the lies you believed about yourself are not reality. They are limitations that have no authority over your potential. They are stories that can be rewritten, chains that can be broken, prisons from which you can escape. The power to destroy them has always been within you. It is in your courage to confront them, your discipline to reject them, and your relentless determination to replace them with truth. See yourself differently, because once you do, everything changes. Your energy changes, your mindset changes, your choices change, and ultimately your life changes. The person you have been is not the person you are destined to become. The lies you've carried are not the measure of your worth. Destroy them and step into the person who has been waiting, hungry and unstoppable, behind every doubt, every fear, and every false belief you've ever been told. There is no room for compromise. There's no waiting for permission. Destroy the lies, claim your truth, become the version of yourself you were always capable of being. The journey begins now, and it begins with one fierce, unapologetic, undeniable truth. You are more than the lies you believe, and the world is waiting for the scion of you that refuses to be defined by anything other than your own limitless potential. Once you've confronted the lies you believed about yourself, the next step in transforming your life is to rebuild your inner identity with ruthless clarity. This is where the real work begins, the point where most people fail because they mistake desire for direction. It's not enough to want to change, to dream bigger, to believe that you are capable of more. Without clarity, without an unflinching understanding of who you are and who you intend to become, all your efforts are scattered, diluted, and ineffective. Rebuilding your identity is about stripping away everything that doesn't serve you, the distractions, the excuses, the weak patterns, and constructing an internal blueprint that aligns perfectly with the life you want to create. Ruthless clarity demands that you confront reality with brutal honesty. You cannot lie to yourself during this process. You cannot soften the edges or pretend that everything is okay when it's not. You must look in the mirror and see yourself exactly as you are today, without embellishment, without justification, without denial. Only by understanding your starting point can you map the path to your destination. Your inner identity is the foundation upon which everything else in your life is built. If your foundation is weak, inconsistent, or flawed, every attempt at success will crumble. That's why clarity is non-negotiable. You must define who you are, what you value, and what you refuse to tolerate in your life. Ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? What do I stand for? What kind of energy do I bring into every room, every interaction, every decision? These questions are not trivial. They are the pillars of self-mastery. When you are clear about who you are, your purpose becomes undeniable. Your direction becomes precise, and your actions become intentional. Without clarity, you drift. You follow trends. You react to others. You allow circumstances to dictate your identity. That is a life without power. That is a life defined by confusion, by indecision, by compromise. Clarity doesn't just illuminate your strengths, it exposes your weaknesses. It forces you to acknowledge the gaps in your character, the habits that undermine you, and the areas where growth is non-negotiable. And that is where the transformation begins, because recognition is the first step toward rebuilding. Rebuilding your inner identity is not a gentle process. It is not about saying affirmations and hoping they stick. It requires a level of ruthlessness, a refusal to allow your past habits, failures, and fears to dictate your present reality. Every thought, every belief, every pattern that no longer serves the person you are becoming must be eliminated with precision. This is why clarity is ruthless. There is no room for compromise. You cannot be partially committed. You cannot cling to outdated versions of yourself because they are comfortable, familiar, or safe. Safety is the enemy of transformation. Familiarity is the enemy of growth. If you want to change the way you see yourself, you must rebuild yourself from the inside out with unyielding focus, refusing to accept anything less than the highest standard of who you know you can be. And this is a process that requires action, not just thought. It is easy to declare, I am changing. It is far harder to live as the person you are becoming every single day, to make decisions, set boundaries, and take actions that align perfectly with your newly defined identity. This alignment is what turns clarity into power. Ruthless clarity also demands that you define the limits of what you will accept in your life. It is not enough to know who you want to be. You must also know what you refuse to tolerate. Who are you allowing to influence your energy? What patterns in your life are stealing your potential? What self-sabotaging behaviors are holding you back? These questions are uncomfortable because they expose the truth, and the truth often hurts. But if you are unwilling to confront the truth, you will never rebuild. You will only decorate the same weak foundation with temporary fixes. Rebuilding your inner identity is about establishing boundaries that protect your vision and reinforce your strength. It is about becoming so clear on your values, your purpose, and your direction that distractions, doubts, and negativity no longer have a place in your life. Ruthless clarity is armor. It shields you from confusion. It protects your potential, and it forces you to move with intentionality toward the life you are capable of creating. One of the most powerful aspects of rebuilding your inner identity is the awareness it brings to your thoughts and actions. When you are clear of who you are, your brain begins to filter opportunities, decisions, and challenges through the lens of your identity. Suddenly, things that once seemed important, urgent, or appealing lose their power over you. People who try to pull you into drama, doubt, or mediocrity no longer matter because you see yourself from a higher perspective. Your inner clarity becomes your compass, guiding every step, every decision, every conversation. The more you live in alignment with your rebuilt identity, the more your self-perception changes. You start to see yourself as someone who doesn't just react to life. You lead, you create, you dominate your circumstances. And when your self-perception changes, everything external begins to reflect that truth. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach start to appear because the energy you carry has changed. Your confidence is no longer fragile because it is rooted in truth, not hope. Your power is no longer borrowed because it is claimed from the inside. Rebuilding your inner identity also requires consistency. Clarity alone is not enough if it is temporary, if it is sporadic, if it only appears when you feel motivated. True identity reconstruction requires repetition, daily practice, and conscious effort. It requires living intentionally in every area of life. Your mindset, your habits, your relationships, your work ethic. Every choice must reinforce the identity you are creating. Every action is a brick in the foundation of the new you. And when you falter, as you inevitably will, clarity allows you to course correct without abandoning your path. You no longer judge yourself harshly for mistakes because your identity is rooted in growth and relentless pursuit, not in perfection. Clarity allows resilience. Clarity allows focus. Clarity allows you to rebuild yourself with precision and power. Finally, the process of rebuilding your inner identity with ruthless clarity is ultimately about freedom. It is about breaking free from confusion, from doubt, from the patterns that have defined you without your permission. It is about stepping into a version of yourself that is fully self-aware, fully accountable, and fully committed to realizing your highest potential. This version of you does not rely on external validation, does not wait for permission, and does not shrink in the face of challenge. It moves forward with deliberate purpose, aligned action, and unwavering confidence. When you rebuild your inner identity with ruthless clarity, you no longer live as someone defined by circumstance, fear, or external opinion. You live as the architect of your own life, the master of your own destiny, and the person who refuses to settle for anything less than what they are capable of achieving. Every day you reinforce this identity with thought, word, and deed until it becomes unshakable, undeniable, and unstoppable. The moment you fully commit to this process, the moment you embrace clarity with ruthlessness, the way you see yourself begins to change. You start seeing the impossible as possible. You start seeing limitations as challenges to overcome. You start seeing your own potential as infinite. And the world begins to respond accordingly because identity precedes everything. The person you are on the inside dictates the life you experience on the outside. Rebuild yourself with clarity, with courage, with discipline, and with the unwavering refusal to settle. Destroy the doubt. Eliminate the confusion. Replace hesitation with intention. Become the version of yourself that your old self never thought was possible. And watch how everything in your life shifts to match the clarity you've built from within. If you want to change the way you see yourself, if you want to step into the person you've been destined to become, nothing will have a greater impact than your daily habits. Habits are the silent architects of your life. They dictate who you become more than your intentions, your desires, or even your dreams. The truth is, most people fail to achieve greatness not because they lack talent or vision, but because they refuse to discipline themselves consistently. They allow emotion to control their choices. They wake up in the morning, decide how they feel, and let that fleeting feeling dictate action. When motivation is high, they chase their goals. When motivation is low, they retreat. But life doesn't wait for your feelings to line up with your ambitions. The world doesn't pause until you feel inspired. Discipline is the bridge between dreams and reality. It is the difference between the person you are and the person you are becoming. Discipline is not a feeling. It is a commitment to act regardless of how you feel, to do what is necessary even when your emotions tell you to quit, to execute with consistency even when desire wanes. And if you want to truly see yourself differently, you must rewrite your daily habits with this kind of relentless discipline. Emotions are fleeting, unreliable, and dangerous if they are the compass of your life. Feeling motivated or energized in the morning does not guarantee results. Feeling tired or unmotivated in the evening does not excuse failure. Most people allow their emotions to dictate behavior. And because emotions are inconsistent, their lives remain inconsistent. They work hard for a week or a month and then quit because the emotional high has faded. Discipline, on the other hand, creates consistency. Discipline does not negotiate with your feelings. Discipline demands actio. Even when your body wants rest, even when your mind wants distraction, even when your circumstances seem unfair, discipline is the engine that drives transformation. When you choose discipline over emotion, you become the master of your energy instead of the servant of your feelings. You wake up and execute. You plan and persist. You refuse to let temporary emotions derail your long-term vision. This is how ordinary people become extraordinary. This is how the version of yourself that you've been dreaming about begins to emerge, not because you feel like it, but because you do not accept excuses. Rewriting your daily habits begins with understanding that small actions compound into massive results. Most people underestimate the power of daily routine. They think transformation is a sudden event, a single breakthrough, or a lightning strike of inspiration. The truth is that change is slow, deliberate, and accumulative. Every hour you waste, every habit you indulge in without purpose, every choice to settle or procrastinate adds up to the person you become. Conversely, every small act of discipline, every deliberate decision to align with your goals, every time you choose action over comfort, builds momentum, shapes identity, and rewires the way you see yourself. Your life is the sum of your habits, not your wishes. If you want to see yourself as strong, capable, and unstoppable, your daily actions must reflect that. You cannot tell yourself you are disciplined while your habits betray you. You cannot claim to be committed while your days are spent drifting. Your habits are the proof of who you are. And if they are not aligned with the person you want to become, your perception of yourself will never change. To rewrite your habits, you must first confront the ones that are destroying your vision. Identify the routines, behaviors, and automatic reactions that are keeping you trapped in mediocrity. Maybe it's the time you waste scrolling through social media instead of learning, creating, or building. Maybe it's the excuses you make for skipping workouts, for not studying, for not showing up fully in your own life. Maybe it's the people you surround yourself with who normalize laziness, fear, or distraction. These habits, when left unchecked, reinforce the lies you believed about yourself. They whisper, you are not ready, you are not capable, you are not worthy. Discipline is the antidote. It requires ruthless honesty, daily evaluation, and unwavering commitment to replace destructive habits with empowering ones. This is not a casual effort. This is not an experiment. This is a lifestyle overhaul, a conscious decision every single day to act as the person you are becoming, not the one you have been. Discipline over emotion means creating structure and sticking to it no matter what. It means building routines that shape your character, not just your circumstances. It means committing to actions that reinforce strengths, skill, and resilience. Even when they are uncomfortable. The moment you embrace discipline, your habits begin to reflect the person you are becoming. You no longer wake up hoping you'll feel like working. You wake up knowing that working is not optional. You no longer wait for inspiration. You create it through action. You no longer rely on fleeting motivation. You depend on the structure and consistency of your choices. And as these habits compound, your perception of yourself transforms. You start to see yourself as someone who doesn't quit, someone who doesn't negotiate with feelings, someone who is unstoppable because they have mastered the art of showing up regardless of circumstance. Another critical part of rewriting habits with discipline is accountability. Habits do not exist in isolation. They thrive or die based on the environment and the people around you. To change the way you see yourself, surround yourself with structures and individuals that reinforce the disciplined life you are building. Track your progress, measure your performance, and refuse to excuse failure. Celebrate consistency, no matter how small, and use setbacks as data, not justification to quit. Your identity is formed by repetition, by proving to yourself daily that you are committed to your own evolution. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you strengthen the neural pathways in your brain, rewiring yourself to be the person capable of achieving extraordinary results. The final truth about habits and discipline is this. It is not a temporary effort. Transformation is not a short-term project. It is a lifelong commitment. Habits that shape your identity must be nurtured daily, refined continuously, and protected fiercely. One day of discipline will not change your life. 1 month of inconsistent effort will not make you powerful, but years of relentless discipline practice will. This is the path to mastery, to self-respect, to the kind of unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you do not rely on feelings or circumstances to define your actions. You become the person who commands life instead of being commanded by it. You see yourself as someone capable of enduring, achieving, and dominating because your daily actions, fueled by discipline, prove it to yourself over and over again. Ultimately, rewriting your daily habits with discipline, not emotion, is the key to changing your self-perception. When you live this way, you stop identifying with weakness, procrastination, or inconsistency. You stop seeing yourself as someone who fails or hesitates. You start identifying with action, resilience, and excellence. You stop hoping for external validation because your internal standards are now higher than anyone else's expectations. Your habits become the evidence of your transformation. And every day, every choice, every moment of discipline reinforces the new identity you are building. The person you were yesterday no longer defines your story. The person you are becoming is written in the hours, minutes, and seconds of deliberate, disciplined action. This is how ordinary lives are transformed into extraordinary ones, and it begins with a single truth. Emotion will always betray you, but discipline will never fail you. Rewrite your habits, live with discipline, and watch the way you see yourself and the world change forever. If you want to change the way you see yourself, if you want to transform your life from ordinary to extraordinary, it is not enough to think differently, feel differently, or even set goals. The real transformation begins when your actions and your words start reflecting the person you are becoming, not the person you've been. Most people fail to evolve because they live in the past. They carry the identity of yesterday into today, repeating the same patterns, speaking the same words, and acting in ways that reinforce their old self. Your past is not your prison, but it is a trap if you allow it to define you. The moment you decide to live as the person you are becoming, the moment you speak, walk, and act as if you have already arrived, you create an energy that transforms both your inner world and your external reality. The way you see yourself is largely dictated by the signals you send to your own mind. If you act small, think small, and speak as though you are powerless, your mind believes it. If you act boldly, speak confidently, and live as though you are capable of greatness, your mind and eventually the world respond. NDS accordingly. To speak and act like the person you are becoming requires a level of awareness that most people never achieve. It is not about pretending or wearing a mask. It is about aligning every word, every action, every choice with the identity you are creating. Your speech is a reflection of your self-image. Every time you use language that minimizes your power, excuses your failures, or diminishes your potential, you are reinforcing your old self. Saying, I can't, I'm not ready, or maybe someday. Train your mind to see limitation, not possibility. On the other hand, when you speak with authority, clarity, and confidence, even before the world validates it, you're programming your brain to accept that you are already capable. Words are not just communication, they are commands to yourself. They set the tone for your energy, influence your behavior, and broadcast the version of you that you allow the world to interact with. If your words are weak, your life will be weak. If your words are strong, deliberate, and reflective of your emerging identity, your life begins to rise to meet them. Action is equally critical. You can speak confidently, declare your greatness, and repeat affirmations until your voice is hoarse. But if your actions contradict your words, the transformation will stall. The person you are becoming is defined by consistent alignment between what you say and what you do. It's about making choices that reinforce the future you are building. When challenges arise, do you act like the person who perseveres, or do you shrink back into fear and hesitation? When opportunities appear, do you act like someone ready to seize them, or do you let them pass because the old you doubts your worth? Every action is a vote for the identity you claim. The person you were yesterday cannot dictate the life you live today unless you allow it. If you want to see yourself differently, you must behave differently, starting immediately. Speak, walk, and act with the confidence, discipline, and courage of the person you know you are becoming. This is not optional. It is mandatory for anyone serious about transformation. Another powerful aspect of this keynote is the idea of living ahead of your current circumstances. Most people wait to feel ready, to feel qualified, to feel capable before they start acting like the person they want to be. But readiness is a myth. Confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you create through action. The person you are becoming is not waiting for permission from the world. They are taking control of their destiny now. By acting ahead of your current level, you force your mind and body to adapt, to rise to the new standard, and to develop the resilience, skill, and energy required to match the identity you claim. This is how leaders are formed, how champions are built, and how ordinary people evolve into forces that cannot be ignored. You must live in the tension between who you are today and who you are becoming. That tension creates growth. That tension creates strength. That tension creates the energy of someone who refuses to be limited by past habits, old labels, or outdated beliefs. Your environment and the people around you play a critical role in reinforcing this new identity. When you speak and act like the person you are becoming, you will notice shifts in how others perceive you. People respond to energy and confidence, not to words alone. When you carry yourself with authority, integrity, and intention, you attract people, opportunities, and situations that match your emerging self. Conversely, if your actions are inconsistent and your words reflect hesitation, doubt, or fear, you reinforce your old self and attract mediocrity. Living as the person you are becoming requires intentionality in both communication and action. And it requires surrounding yourself with influences that support and reflect the version of you are creating. You cannot grow into greatness in an environment that reinforces smallness, and you cannot act like a force if your surroundings are designed to maintain weakness. Consistency is the secret that bridges identity and reality. One day of acting like your future self will not transform your life, but every day repeated without compromise will compound into undeniable results. Every decision, every word, every step is a brick in the foundation of the person you are building. Over time, the repetition of aligned action creates habits. Habits create character, and character solidifies identity. Your mind begins to see you as the person you claim to be. You no longer need external validation because you have proven to yourself through action that you are capable, strong, and worthy. Once your internal identity aligns with your external behavior, the world begins to reflect that truth back to you. Opportunities that once seemed impossible appear. Challenges that once intimidated you now become stepping stones. Fear no longer controls your choices because you have already acted beyond it. Repeatedly, deliberately, and with courage. It is important to understand that acting and speaking as the person you are becoming is not a temporary exercise or a performance for others. It is a declaration of self-respect, a refusal to let the past define you, and a commitment to embodying the highest version of yourself every single day. This is where the real transformation occurs, when identity, words, and action align. When you walk into a room, you no longer carry the doubts of yesterday. When you speak, your voice commands attention because it is backed by authenticity and deliberate choice. When you act, every step reinforces the truth you are creating, that you are capable, you are strong, and you are relentless in pursuit of your potential. Finally, the most powerful truth about this keynote is that transformation happens from the inside out. The world does not define you. Your actions and your words define you. When you start living, speaking, and acting like the person you are becoming, you force both your mind and your environment to recognize the new standard you have set. You begin to operate from a place of authority, confidence, and certainty. You no longer ask permission to be great. You no longer wait for circumstances to change. You no longer allow fear, doubt, or past failures to dictate your life. You become the person who cannot be shaken because your identity is rooted in deliberate, consistent, and aligned action. Every word you speak, every choice you make, every action you take becomes a declaration of your emerging self. And the moment you fully commit to this, the way you see yourself and the way the world sees you changes forever. If you want to change the way you see yourself, if you truly want to evolve into the person you are destined to become, you must understand one fundamental truth. Comfort kills growth. Comfort is seductive. It whispers to you that what you have is enough, that the risks are too great, that settling is safe. But the person you are becoming is not born from comfort. They are forged in fire, shaped by struggle, sharpened by challenges, and strengthened by relentless pressure. Most people avoid pressure because it is uncomfortable, because it tests them, because it exposes weakness. But pressure is the catalyst for transformation. Pressure pushes you beyond your limits. Pressure forces you to adapt, to innovate, to rise above excuses and mediocrity. Pressure reveals what you are truly made of. If you want to see yourself differently, if you want to become more than you are, you must actively seek environments, relationships, and situations that demand your best and refuse to allow you to settle. Pressure is not punishment. It is the vehicle for growth. When you are comfortable, your mind and body relax, your habits stagnate, and your potential withers. You remain small, predictable, and easily replaced. But when you surround yourself with pressure, everything changes. You are forced to rise or fall. You are forced to confront your weaknesses, overcome your fears, and exceed your expectations. Pressure does not give you the choice to coast. It demands accountability. It demands effort. It demands excellence. The person you are becoming cannot thrive in a vacuum of comfort. They require the intensity of challenge to shape their character, the friction of difficulty to hone their skills, and the adversity of obstacles to prove their resilience. Pressure is the furnace in which greatness is forged. And if you avoid it, you avoid the very circumstances that will allow you to become extraordinary. Most people think comfort is success. They measure their lives by the absence of struggle, by ease, and by convenience. They aim to avoid pressure rather than seeking it out as a tool for growth. But the truth is that comfort is a trap, a slow poison that dulls ambition and suffocates potential. To see yourself differently, to redefine your identity, you must reject comfort as a primary goal. You must instead embrace pressure as a necessary condition for transformation. The people you surround yourself with, the challenges you pursue, and the standards you set for yourself must all operate under higher intensity than what is familiar. Comfort may feel safe, but safety never builds strength. Safety never produces excellence. Safety never transforms dreams into reality. Pressure does. Pressure forces you to act, to perform, to execute. And in doing so, it exposes the power that already exists within you. Surrounding yourself with pressure also means surrounding yourself with people who push you, challenge you, and hold you accountable. The company you keep can either reinforce comfort or create friction that drives growth. If your friends, family, or colleagues enable excuses, tolerate mediocrity, or validate stagnation, they are reinforcing the version of yourself that has held you back. On the other hand, if you align yourself with people who demand your best, challenge your thinking, and refuse to accept anything less than your full potential, you create an environment where growth is inevitable. These are the people who push you to wake up earlier, work harder, study longer, practice more, and refuse to settle. They are mirrors reflecting not just your potential, but also your weaknesses. They force you to confront realities you would otherwise ignore, and in doing so, they accelerate the process of transformation. Pressure is amplified when it comes from others who refuse to let you stay small, who refuse to allow you to compromise your future, and who remind you daily of the greatness you are capable of achieving. Embracing pressure also requires embracing challenges that feel uncomfortable, even intimidating. The tasks you avoid, the risks you fear, and the obstacles you procrastinate on are precisely the areas where pressure will transform you. Growth does not occur in safe zones. It errs in the discomfort, in the struggle, in the moments when you feel fear, doubt, or uncertainty. Pressure forces you to adapt, to innovate, and to discover inner resources you never knew existed. The person you are becoming is shaped by these moments of tension, by the times when you are forced to dig deeper than you thought possible. Every challenge you willingly face under pressure becomes proof to yourself that you are capable, resilient, and unstoppable. You stop defining yourself by your limitations because you repeatedly confront and overcome them under duress. You stop shrinking in the face of difficulty because pressure trains you to rise. And in this process, your self-perception transforms. You begin to see yourself as someone capable of withstanding anything, someone who thrives where others crumble, someone whose potential cannot be contained by circumstance or comfort. Another critical aspect of surrounding yourself with pressure is the mindset it creates. When you live in environments that challenge you, demand your excellence, and push you beyond your limits, you develop mental toughness. You develop the ability to endure, to persist, and to thrive in situations that would crush ordinary people. Pressure teaches you to separate fear from action, to distinguish discomfort from impossibility, and to understand that struggle is not punishment, but opportunity. Your perception of yourself shifts dramatically under this mindset. You no longer see obstacles as reason to quit. You see them as stepping stones to a higher version of yourself. You no longer measure success by ease, you measure it by growth. You no longer define your worth by comfort, you define it by resilience, effort, and results. Pressure transforms identity because it forces alignment between what you say you want and what you are willing to endure to get it. Living under pressure also forces you to take ownership of your life. When life is comfortable, it's easy to blame circumstances, luck, or other people for your failures. But when you surround yourself with pressure, excuses no longer work. You are confronted daily with the need to perform, adapt, and overcome. You become accountable to yourself, to your environment, and to the vision you are creating. Pressure strips away the illusions that comfort allows. It forces you to confront the truth of your capabilities and limitations, and it demands action. The person you are becoming learns to thrive in this environment because they accept responsibility for their growth, for their success, and for their identity. They understand that pressure is not punishment, but preparation, and that mastery is earned in the moments of highest tension. Ultimately, surrounding yourself with pressure, not comfort, changes the way you see yourself because it redefines your reality. The version of you that emerges under pressure is stronger, more confident, more capable, and more resilient than the version of you that existed in comfort. You begin to see yourself not as someone waiting for opportunity, but as someone who creates it. You see yourself not as a victim of circumstance, but as a master of adaptation and strategy. You see yourself not as limited by fear, but as empowered by challenge. Every day, every interaction, every challenge under pressure becomes a proof point for your emerging identity. And the more you expose yourself to pressure, the more undeniable your potential becomes. The world responds to your energy, your resilience, and your consistency, and you start achieving at levels you once thought impossible. If you want to see yourself differently, if you want to become the person you were always capable of being, comfort is your enemy and pressure is your ally. Seek it, embrace it, surround yourself with it. Let it challenge you, shape you, and refine you. Let it push you to levels of strength, courage, and ability that you never thought possible. Every struggle, every difficulty, every high pressure situation becomes a mirror reflecting the truth. You are capable, you are resilient, and you are destined for greatness. Stop chasing comfort, stop avoiding challenge, step into the pressure and watch the person you are becoming rise from it, unstoppable, unshakable, and undeniable. If you want to change the way you see yourself, if you want to rise to the person you are destined to become, you must confront one of the most powerful forces that will ever stand in your way: fear. Fear is the invisible barrier that keeps countless people trapped in mediocrity. It disguises itself in different forms: self-doubt, hesitation, anxiety, overthinking, and procrastination. But no matter the form, its purpose is the same: to keep you from reaching your full potential. Most people live their entire lives avoiding fear, sidestepping challenges, and retreating from discomfort. They convince themselves that avoiding fear is wisdom, that playing it safe is smart, that waiting for the right time is reasonable. But this is a lie. Fear is not your enemy in the sense that it needs to be eradicated. It is a signal, a compass, a marker showing exactly where growth and opportunity lie. The person you are becoming does not shrink from fear. They face it, they embrace it, and they let it fuel their evolution. To see yourself differently, you must learn to confront fear head on and redefine what failure means in your life. Fear is powerful because it is emotional, and emotions have the ability to hijack your mind if left unchecked. When fear takes control, it distorts reality. It convinces you that you are weaker than you are, that the risk is too great, and that the consequences of failure are permanent. But the truth is, fear is temporary, and the lessons you gain from confronting it are permanent. Every time you step into fear, every time you do what terrifies you, your mind recalibrates. You begin to understand that fear is not a stop sign, it is a guidepost. It points directly to the areas in your life where potential is highest, where growth is inevitable, and where your courage will be forged. The first step in transforming your relationship with fear is to see it for what it is. Not a wall, but a door. Not a limit, but a signal of opportunity. And the moment you step through that door, your self-perception begins to shift dramatically. Redefining failure is equally critical. Most people fear failure because they misunderstand it. They see it as a verdict, a permanent label, or proof of inadequacy. They measure their worth by the outcome, not by the effort, the courage, or the lessons learned along the way. But failure is not an endpoint. It is a teacher, a mirror, a tool for refinement. Every failure contains information, feedback, and direction. Every time you stumble, hesitate, or fall short, you are presented with an opportunity to learn, adapt, and become stronger. The person you are becoming does not define themselves by temporary setbacks. They define themselves by resilience, by persistence, and by the courage to continue despite difficulty. The moment you redefine failure as a necessary and invaluable part of growth, fear loses its power. You stop avoiding action because of potential mistakes, and you begin to embrace action because it accelerates your evolution. Confronting fear requires deliberate and consistent action. It is not a one-time event, it is a daily practice. Fear thrives in avoidance, hesitation, and inactivity. The more you avoid it, the stronger it becomes. But every time you choose to act despite fear, every time you take steps forward when your instincts scream to retreat, your confidence grows. You train your mind and body to respond differently, to act courageously under pressure, and to trust in your own ability to overcome challenges. The person you are becoming does not wait for fear to vanish before acting. They act in the presence of fear. And in doing so, they prove to themselves that they are stronger than any emotion, more capable than any circumstance, and more resilient than any obstacle. Action in the face of fear is transformative because it rewires your identity. You no longer see yourself as limited, doubtful, or fragile. You see yourself as courageous, capable, and unstoppable. Another critical element of confronting fear and redefining failure is mental reframing. Fear often magnifies risk, exaggerates consequences, and distorts reality. You must learn to step back and examine fear objectively. Ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen? How likely is it? And even if it happens, what can I learn and how can I recover? By reframing fear in this way, you transform it from a paralyzing force into a strategic tool. You begin to see challenges as puzzles to solve, obstacles as training grounds, and risk as the bridge to opportunity. The person you are becoming understands that the discomfort associated with fear is temporary, but the growth it produces is lasting. Each confrontation with fear strengthens your resolve, expands your capacity, and reshapes the way you see yourself. Redefining failure also changes your relationship with risk. Most people avoid risk because they equate it with loss, embarrassment, or danger. But the person you are becoming sees risk differently. They understand that calculated, courageous action is the only way to achieve extraordinary results. They know that growth, opportunity, and greatness are hidden on the other side of discomfort and uncertainty. Every time you take a risk, every time you act despite fear, you are building evidence in your own mind that you are capable, resilient, and unstoppable. You stop fearing the unknown because you begin to experience success and growth precisely because of it. You begin to see yourself as someone who doesn't retreat in the face of challenge, but someone who thrives because of it. Surrounding yourself with environments that reinforce courage also amplifies this process. The people you interact with, the challenges you accept, and the standards you set for yourself must all support the practice of confronting fear. Avoid environments that celebrate mediocrity, tolerate excuses, or normalize avoidance. Instead, immerse yourself in spaces where pressure, accountability, and challenge are the norm. Let the energy of others who face fear, take risks, and redefine failure inspire and push you to higher levels. Fear diminishes when it is faced collectively, and courage is practiced. Daily. The person you are becoming does not isolate themselves from challenges. They embrace them, learn from them, and grow stronger with every encounter. Ultimately, confronting fear head on and redefining failure changes the way you see yourself because it forces you to prove to yourself that limitations, doubt, and setbacks are temporary. You begin to see yourself as someone courageous, resilient, and capable of extraordinary achievement. You realize that your past mistakes do not define your future, that your hesitation does not dictate your destiny, and that fear is not a stop sign, but a compass pointing you toward the areas of your life with the highest growth potential. Every time you act despite fear, every time you embrace failure as a teacher rather than a verdict, your self-perception evolves. You see yourself as someone who rises when others fall, someone who thrives under pressure, someone who refuses to be limited by doubt or hesitation. The transformation is complete when confronting fear and redefining failure becomes your default operating system. Fear no longer dictates your actions. Failure no longer diminishes your identity. You live with a mindset that sees challenge as opportunity, struggle as growth, and risk as a gateway to your highest potential. The person you are becoming is forged in courage, resilience, and unshakable self-belief. And the moment you internalize this truth, the way you see yourself, the way you operate in the world and the life you create will be radically, irreversibly, and undeniably different. If you want to change the way you see yourself, if you want to step into the person you were always capable of becoming, you must embrace one ultimate principle. Relentless action is not just a tactic. It is the very foundation of identity. Most people talk about change, dream about transformation, and even set goals, but they fail to follow through. They wait for the right moment, the perfect plan, or the surge of inspiration that never comes. They misunderstand the power of action. Action is not something you do occasionally. It is not a tool to use when you feel motivated. It is the mechanism through which your future self is created. To see yourself differently, you must commit to relentless action until it stops being something you do and starts being who you are. This is the distinction between wishing for change and becoming change itself. When action is relentless, it reshapes perception, rewires belief, and builds character at a pace that words and intentions alone cannot match. Relentless action requires consistency that exceeds motivation. Motivation is fleeting. Inspiration comes and goes, and when it fades, most people fall back into old habits, old beliefs, and old identities. The person you are becoming does not depend on temporary feelings. They act regardless of how they feel. They wake up early, push through fatigue, and persist when the world says stop. They understand that transformation, it's not a series of bursts, but a steady, disciplined, unyielding commitment to action every single day. Each moment you choose to act instead of hesitate, to push instead of quit, to build instead of settle, compounds into evidence that you are no longer defined by your past. Your actions become the proof of your evolving identity. They signal to your brain, your body, and your environment that you are committed, capable, and unstoppable. Relentless action is the bridge between desire and reality, between the person you were and the person you are becoming. One of the most critical aspects of this keynote is understanding that action shapes belief faster than thought alone. Most people think that if they just believe in themselves enough, their lives will change. But belief without execution is nothing more than fantasy. True belief is forged through repeated action. Every time you do what is difficult, every time you take steps others avoid, every time you honor your commitments to yourself, you reinforce the truth that you are capable, resilient, and disciplined. Action rewires your mind to see opportunities instead of obstacles, progress instead of failure, and strength instead of limitation. The more you act relentlessly, the more your internal identity shifts to match your external performance. Eventually, you no longer have to try to be this person. It becomes automatic. You don't just think differently, you live differently. You don't just hope for change, you embody it. Relentless action is not random. It requires intention, focus, and alignment with your vision. Every action you take must move you closer to the person you are becoming. This means evaluating your daily behaviors, your routines, and your priorities. It means identifying actions that compound into results and discarding those that waste energy or reinforce mediocrity. It means choosing discipline over distraction, execution over excuse, and courage over hesitation. The person you are becoming does not act aimlessly. They act strategically, deliberately, and relentlessly. Every step is calculated, every effort purposeful, and every setback a lesson that fuels further action. This is how ordinary people are separated from those who achieve extraordinary results. Relentless action is not busy work. It is intentional work, consistently executed until it becomes the fabric of your identity. Another crucial element is embracing discomfort as the cost of relentless action. Most people avoid action because it is uncomfortable, because it challenges their routine, or because it exposes them to the risk of failure. But discomfort is the currency of transformation. The more you push, the more you challenge, the more you step into what others avoid, the faster your identity evolves. Action that is easy, safe, or convenient will never create the person you want to become. To live as your highest self, you must take action that stretches your limits, that demands courage, that forces adaptation. Every uncomfortable choice, every bold move, every act of persistence is evidence that you are no longer the person who hesitates or retreats. You begin to see yourself as strong, capable, and unstoppable because your daily actions prove it. Relentless action and discomfort are inseparable. They are the twin engines of transformation. The compounding effect of relentless action is another defining factor. Action is like a snowball rolling downhill. Small, consistent efforts accumulate, and over time, they become unstoppable momentum. The person you are becoming understands this principle. They do not expect immediate results. They do not get discouraged by slow progress or temporary setbacks. They understand that each repetition, each decision, each effort builds evidence that reinforces identity. You begin to internalize success because your actions validate it. You see yourself differently, not because someone tells you who you are, not because of a motivational quote, but because you have proven it to yourself through relentless commitment. Momentum compounds results, reshapes perception, and ultimately transforms identity in ways that cannot be ignored. Relentless action also transforms how you perceive fear, doubt, and failure. When you act continuously, consistently, and intentionally, you learn that fear is a signal, not a barrier. Doubt is temporary, not permanent, and failure is feedback, not judgment. The person who moves relentlessly becomes resilient because they are constantly confronting challenges and conquering obstacles. Action builds confidence because it creates evidence of capability. It builds self-respect because it honors commitments to yourself. It builds authority because the world begins to respond to a person who does not hesitate, who does not quit, and who refuses to settle. Every action you take reinforces the truth. You are not defined by your past, your fears, or your mistakes. You are defined by your willingness to act, persist, and evolve relentlessly. Ultimately, committing to relentless action until it becomes your identity changes the way you see yourself because it makes transformation undeniable. You stop relying on external validation, fleeting motivation, or hope. Your identity is no longer theoretical. It is proven daily through what you do, how you act, and the results you create. You see yourself as strong because your actions reflect strength. You see yourself as capable because your actions reflect capability. You see yourself as unstoppable because your actions reflect persistence. The world responds to your energy, your momentum, and your consistency. And over time, the person you were yesterday becomes unrecognizable compared to the person who acts relentlessly, lives intentionally, and refuses to settle until excellence is not just a goal, but the essence of who they are. Relentless action is the final step in redefining yourself because it integrates all the previous keynotes. You destroy lies about yourself. Rebuild your identity, rewrite habits, act with alignment, seek pressure, confront fear, and now you execute consistently until it becomes part of your DNA. Every action, every choice, every moment compounds into a new identity. You do not need permission to be great. You do not need external validation to act. You simply commit every single day until who you are internally matches who you project externally, until your life reflects the relentless pursuit of your potential, until you can look in the mirror and see the person you always knew you could be. Relentless action turns intention into reality, belief into proof, and transformation into identity. It is the key that unlocks greatness. And it is available to anyone willing to commit, persist, and endure. Now, take a moment and think about everything we've covered. All the strategies, all the principles, all the truths that have been laid before you. This is not just information. This is a call to action. This is a blueprint for transformation. Too many people spend their entire lives wondering why they aren't where they want to be, why they keep failing, why they feel stuck. And the truth is simple. It is because they have not confronted themselves. They have not looked in the mirror and decided that who they are today is no longer acceptable. They have not taken the steps, endured the struggle, or embraced the pressure necessary to become the person they know they are capable of being. Everything we've discussed today, the destruction of the lies you believe, the rebuilding of your identity, the rewriting of your habits, the alignment of your words and actions, the seeking of pressure, the confrontation of fear, the relentless pursuit of action, these are not optional. These are non-negotiable if you want to step into greatness. Look, transformation doesn't happen because someone else believes in you. It doesn't happen because motivation visits you in a moment of weakness. It happens because you decide right now that your old self is finished. It happens because you choose to act, to persist, to endure, and to push beyond every limitation you've ever placed on yourself. The moment you embrace these principles, the moment you commit to living by them every single day, your perception of yourself changes. You stop seeing obstacles as walls. You start seeing them as challenges to overcome, as proofs that you are capable, as opportunities to grow stronger, faster, better. You stop allowing your feelings to dictate your actions because you understand that action is the only bridge to the person you are becoming. You stop waiting for life to hand you your breakthrough because you create it through relentless, consistent effort. And here's the truth your past self doesn't want you to hear. Growth is uncomfortable, transformation is messy, and excellence demands sacrifice. There will be nights when you feel tired, days when you want to quit, and moments when fear screams at you to stop. That is exactly when you have to double down. That is exactly when you have to show yourself that you are stronger than your excuses, braver than your doubts, and more committed than your comfort. Pressure is your friend. Fear is your teacher. Failure is your feedback. Every step you take in the direction of discomfort, every action you take despite doubt, every choice you make to rise above mediocrity is evidence of the unstoppable person you are becoming. So here is the bottom line. Your life will only reflect what you have the courage to embody. You are not your past failures. You are not your old habits. You are not the voice of doubt that whispers in your ear. You are the culmination of every disciplined choice, every courageous action, every moment you refuse to quit. Look in the mirror and see the person you are becoming. Speak like them, act like them, live like them, and do it relentlessly until identity and action are no longer separate, until your potential is undeniable, until your greatness is visible, tangible, and unstoppable. The world is waiting to see what you will become, but more importantly, it is waiting for you to see it in yourself. Stop asking permission to rise. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop doubting your ability. Step into the pressure. Confront the fear, act relentlessly, and prove to yourself that you are not who you were yesterday. You are not limited. You are not small. You are not ordinary. You are relentless. You are powerful, and you are unstoppable. Change the way you see yourself today, and everything in your life will change tomorrow.